On behalf of the UN Movie Society, welcome to this very special conversation in honor of Nelson Mandela International Day. Today, we present The Heart is a Muscle, South Africa's official submission to the Best International Feature Film category at the 98th Academy Awards, winner of the Ecumenical Jury Prize at the Berlin International Film Festival, and a debut from director Imran Hamdulay that announces a truly remarkable new voice in world cinema. A film about inherited trauma, the slow courage of forgiveness, and what it means to be a father. It speaks directly to the values of the heart of the United Nations, the protection of human rights, the pursuit of reconciliation, and the belief that the vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength. As the film reminds us, and as Mandela showed the world, it is in choosing to break the cycle and to forgive and to rise that our common humanity is fully expressed. We are deeply grateful to Ambassador Nkosi, permanent representative of South Africa to the United Nations, for his generous support and opening message today. We are also honored to be joined by Mbongiseni Buthelezi, CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and by Keenan Arrison, whose voice and portrayal of Ryan moves us deeply after the credits roll. Welcome and enjoy.
Distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends, I have the privilege of welcoming you all to this important gathering to enjoy The Heart is a Muscle, a deeply human South African film that reminds us that healing is not an abstract idea. It is personal, it is painful, it is often unfinished. And like the heart itself, it requires work, discipline, and care. The Heart is a Muscle is an intensely personal drama set in the context of an imperfect world with an imperfect hero. It examines core themes that are difficult but very much weaved into the human existence: trauma, silence, anger, as well as the optimistic themes of love, responsibility, and the possibility of change. It is a journey of a man in a world that challenges him to be honest and reflective, to find the essence of fatherly love, expressed not through domination or hardness, but through tenderness, accountability for one's actions, and the courage to heal. The humanity of this story is reflective in the life of Nelson Mandela. We are often in awe of his accomplishments and what he did for South Africa, Africa, and the world. That we often forget he was a man, a father, and human. His deeds were undertaken as a consequence of this reality. Madiba, as he was affectionately known, acted from the side that was most human. His actions were informed through a sense of responsibility as a person, as a father, and from a deep sense of love. As we mark International Nelson Mandela Day, this film speaks powerfully to the legacy of Madiba. Nelson Mandela taught us that courage is not the absence of pain, anger, or fear, but the decision not to be governed by them. He showed us that the cycle of violence, humiliation, and exclusion can be broken, but only when individuals and societies are willing to confront the past honestly. Mandela Day is often associated with service, with giving 67 minutes to others. But service is also about how we treat those closest to us, our children, our family, our communities, and those carrying wounds we may not see. To continue Mandela's work, to build communities rooted in dignity, forgiveness, nonviolence, and care. And may it remind us that the heart, like justice, must be exercised if it is to grow stronger. I thank you.
Good day. My name is Mbongiseni Buthelezi, Chief Executive of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Happy Mandela Day 2026. Mandela Day is an important day the world over. is a day the United Nations celebrates to remind the world of the sacrifice Nelson Mandela and his comrades made in order to bring peace, to bring democracy, to bring a culture of human rights to the people of South Africa and to the people of the world. This year, of course, as every year, we invite you to do something to remember Nelson Mandela by watching this movie, The Heart is a Muscle, as part of remembering why it is important to be of service to others. But also, we ask you to do something, an act of service to other people, to just help make the life of the next person that little bit better.
Thank you, Keenan Arrison, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
At the UN Movie Society, we truly believe that cinema is a vital tool for empathy. And The Heart is a Muscle is a beautiful film that powerfully embodies UN values such as the protection of human rights and the pursuit of reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being such an inspirational actor in this film. Your character, you play the lead character in this film.
Correct, yeah.
Ryan. And Ryan lives in an area called Cape Flats, South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about this area and how this place is deeply scarred by apartheid and how it affected playing your character.
Sure. So we know the history of Cape Town, and in the 60s there were the Group Areas Act and the forced removals of people from the center of Cape Town out to the outskirts, which we now know as the Cape Flats. And we know these areas as sort of poverty-stricken, dealing with gangsterism, violence, alcohol abuse, fatherlessness, and it was such a sort of full circle moment for me because I come from an area that's very similar to this, and being able to portray this character that comes from an era like that it really resonated with me when I read the script for the first time, and it wasn't hard to be able to immerse myself in the character and the world because it was all around us while shooting. You could see the sort of hopelessness of the area and the unemployment. Kids were sort of just not even going to school. So it was really such an eye-opening, real experience for me. There wasn't any sort of acting, if you will, that I needed to tap into because the environment allowed us to just take it all in and relive experiences that those people live with every day.
It's disheartening.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The character Ryan, he frequently throughout the film, he's in constant conversation with his past.
Correct.
A past trauma. And the post-1994 transition refers to South Africa's complex shifts from the oppression of apartheid to a multiracial democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how Ryan, the character, carried the weight of this oppression and how it is different from the way his own father carried this trauma.
So yes, the film is about fathers and sons and what we inherit from our fathers. And a lot of the time people from those areas inherit a lot of trauma that it's not dealt with. And so the way they deal with it is through I guess, drugs, alcoholism, and Ryan's father, who was deeply rooted and really a big figure within that area while Ryan was growing up. It really stuck with him, and at some point in his life he knew that he needed to make a change, and he knew that he needed to, if he was going to be a father, how he would be a better father. So what happens is Ryan then moves from an area similar to the Cape Flats and then sort of to a more middle class working area, which allows him to then sort of go for things that he'd dream about or that he'd wanted to achieve. He wanted to be a fashion designer, but he needed to step out of this world. but he also needed to get rid of the cycle and trying to figure out how to break those cycles. And sometimes as men, we don't know how to get out of it, because as men we fumble a lot, and Ryan fumbles throughout. And because he has a son, he just doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to deal with being a father that's been suppressing all this trauma for so long. Yeah. And a lot of fathers and a lot of young men, there are no access points for kids in those areas. There's no sort of retreat to make things better or talk about it or deal with it in a healthy way. And what the director's vision was that we won't judge people who come from those areas. Ryan can't. We constantly spoke about him not judging his father or himself, but instead, how do we flip the lens and looking at it from a more kinder and a more gentle and more vulnerable point of view?
You performed it with so much vulnerability.
Thank you.
Ryan's character he has strength and vulnerability and tenderness.
Yeah. A lot of our discussion was around what does the other side of the Cape Flats look? So we know that it comes from the hardship and this history of violence, but the other side of that is people from those areas also have joy. They've also been given love and kindness, and it's so colorful. The people on the Cape Flats or from Cape Town are so colorful, and those type of stories never get depicted in cinema. And in our stories, we always get to see sort of the negative side of it, or the darker side of it. And I think what drew me to the character and the story was that we were highlighting what that sort of what the joy was in those communities, the color and the joy and the kindness and the love. And one of my favorite lines in the movie was that we've inherited so much from our parents and their parents, but amidst all the negativity, they've also given us kindness and love and joy and compassion and empathy, and we have to remember that.
Exactly. The film takes place during an afternoon at a birthday barbecue, on an isolated afternoon. And when Ryan loses his child and is searching for his child, it triggers a very specific inherited violence.
Correct.
And why was it so important to show this trauma and his reaction, and how it was not just only about losing his child, but about old trauma?
Yeah. So I think losing the child, or the child going missing, was essentially the catalyst that sends Ryan that sends Ryan on this downward spiral. But it needed to happen in order for him to then go back and start reflecting on everything he's suppressed up until that point. And the film or the story needed to have that moment or this inciting incident, so that he can start from a point of his past. Exactly. And then what that past and how to correct it, and then what is the journey from that point, and there's so much. I think there are so many men out there that there's not even an awareness of where the trauma sits. And I think this film speaks to a lot of the men out there that are positive. There are fathers out there that look after their kids and trying to give them the best education and trying to give them the best life, more than what they had.
Exactly.
So I think, yes, Ryan's trauma was triggered by this event, but it definitely sets him on this journey of self-forgiveness. And healing. Which is what I think our main themes are in this film.
The film is in Afrikaans.
Correct.
And it has an incredible music score.
Yeah.
And how did the language and the music help nourish your role?
It was I can tell you, the score in this film is just so, I think it sets the tone and the pace and the rhythm of the film. And while we were going through the script, he gave me a playlist of of these artists like J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar, and so there was a definite heartbeat to this film.
And
so
rhythm.
while reading the script, and he said, I want you to really pay attention to that rhythm because it's not fast paced. It really sits in this sort of realism that we don't usually see coming out of South Africa or in cinema in South Africa, because everything is so fast paced. People speak really fast, and that tied in with the language, I feel like it just created its own texture.
Exactly.
And its own layer.
It's so beautiful, and it's
Yeah.
not a thriller in the traditional thriller
Correct.
sense. It's
Absolutely.
a thriller in real life.
Yeah, it's this humanist.
It's real.
It's this human drama, you know. And I think one of the biggest things was that he says it's set in the backdrop of this Cape Flats in this world, but it's out there for the hip hop, the kids who love hip hop, this sneaker culture, hip hop culture, where if you go onto the Cape Flats, you see it.
Exactly.
It's alive.
It's,
You know?
it's
Painted on the
colorful.
wall.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's painted on the
Absolutely
walls. Yeah.
So Mandela Day asks us to examine what we inherited and what we choose to pass on. How does Ryan ask himself as a father how his role personally would change his generational questions?
So this inheritance, it took me back to my father and his father. It made me sort of dig a little deeper into my heritage and what I inherited. And it's such an important conversation to have, especially amongst young men,
Exactly.
you know. And I think what Mandela spoke to or speaks to, and what his philosophy in life, is that we've got to come out the other side holding our head up high and really being proud of who we are. And I think the film really speaks to that, you know. We can be proud of who we are regardless of what's happening on the Cape Flats. Yes, there's trauma, there's violence, but we are constantly going to investigate and ask questions about what the other side of that lens is,
Exactly.
you know. And yeah, it speaks to everything that Mandela spoke about, you know, this freedom of speech, independence, and education. And I think that's where it sits. It sits in the education. You know, I think sometimes, especially in those areas, the education system might have failed so many of our past, coming from the apartheid system through the 60s, the 70s. You know, a lot of people weren't afforded the opportunity to go study further. And I think I grew up myself and Imran both grew up in a generation where we were really lucky, where it started changing, you know. And I think, yeah, again, all credit to Imran. Imran's father was also an activist. He was a politician, and he really, I think if you know Imran, you'll know that his father, the essence of his father, sits in this film.
Yep.
And I
The
try to bring
values
that, and the
values
values,
are
exactly,
in
and the
his
principles,
film.
and I try to bring that into my sort of portrayal of this character and what my father instilled in me.
You did it beautifully.
Thank you, thank you.
And in the film, you mentioned during the shooting of the film that it was a joy to work with the director because he had so much compassion
Absolutely.
for the community. Tell us about this experience of working with the
So,
film director.
so Imran Hamdulay, the writer-director, was just, I think, in my opinion, I think he's a genius. He's someone to look out for, just in terms of his storytelling, and because I think we connected mostly on this project because we both come from areas like that. But we also grew up with our fathers. I was completely blown away that he could take a slice of life and really flip it on the audience, if you know what I mean. He really, he knew the intricacies, the details, nuances of that world, but also what the other side of that world is. And I must just say, I had the best time working with him because it was easy. We started developing this unspoken sort of chemistry where the directing became, it wasn't about directing, but it's more about having this conversation. And coming into principal photography, our rehearsals were spent talking about our fathers and our friends. And
beautiful.
you know, so it does feed into and speak to so many other men out there, or young men who do come from healthy families. And my experience with him has just been, I mean, we're still friends. We're trying to work on more projects together, because I believe him as a writer director he's got a distinct voice, and he knows how to highlight the best of Cape Town and those areas.
Of humanity.
And humanity, 100%,
Exactly.
yes.
What do you think happens to Ryan
To be honest with you,
after?
yeah,
Because the ending is not a typical Hollywood ending.
absolutely.
It's not a happy Hollywood ending.
Correct. It
It
doesn't
leaves the
close.
audience to ask questions.
And that's, again, it's this filmmaker's style. You know, life, I feel for me, Ryan's journey really starts at the end of this film. You know,
Yes.
it's, yes, you as the audience sort of have to make up your own mind, but for me as the actor, I feel Ryan's journey really starts because he makes a very pivotal moment at the end of the film.
Exactly.
He decides to get into the police car and go where he's been running away from it for so long, his entire life.
Yeah.
You know, and without giving away too much, his friend had to sort of cover a lot of what his mistakes were. And I think the moment at the end is him taking accountability and responsibility for what he's done.
You mentioned in the process of preparing for this role, when you read the script, you were scared.
Yeah.
And because it was so close to reality,
Mm-hmm.
how did you ensure that Ryan stayed colorful and joyful as a character and not slide into the stereotypical gangster stereotypes that we
Correct.
frequently see?
I think, again, it came down to our discussion around where Ryan lives, where we meet him in the beginning of the film and where he's heading. And there was a definite fine line. It's so easy to slip into the stereotypical thing, but I think what kept us on point, and I guess our North Star was Imran's note, is that everything is done with kindness.
Yes,
There's
with
absolute-
heart and kindness.
Exactly.
The
There's-
title of the film.
Correct, yeah, and there's no judgment, and I think that was my anchor, to stay on course. So you see a bit of his violence, but it's suddenly taken back, and it takes you on a completely different journey as an audience member, because you think it's going one way, and this could just easily become a violent movie. But we wanted to show this humanity.
Exactly.
You know, we wanted to show that he is real and he struggles, and yes, he tries, but he falls and he fails, but he gets up and he tries again. And I think that also speaks to the people of Cape Town and the people of the Cape Flats. You know, every day is a struggle, but they get up. Boy, do they get up, and they go. You know, and I think that was definitely a positive sort of hook for me.
Yeah.
I think for me is that young men, what they should take away from it is that it's okay, firstly, it's okay to be vulnerable. I want men to see themselves in other men,
Yes.
especially from those areas. I want young men to see the hope and the aspiration and the I guess the potential, because there's so much potential and so much talent in those areas.
Exactly.
You know, and I want them to see, even as a filmmaker, if somebody's watching it and they have a desire and a dream to become an actor, a director, I think this film really speaks to that. It shows that it's possible. Anything is possible. Yeah.
You've
I think
inspired
even it's,
this
yes,
generation.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In the spirit of Nelson Mandela, who taught us, it is in your hands to make a better world for all who live in it, I want to thank you so much for your time today, for inspiring the young men and the global audience.
Thank you.
And this film truly exemplifies the UN values of human rights and reconciliation, and the importance of maintaining strength and tenderness in our hearts throughout all of this.
Yeah, all I can say it's you know, there's this saying like tigers don't cry. I think what I've learned from this film is that it's okay.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is not weakness.
It's strength.
It's a strength.
Yes. On behalf of the UN Movie Society, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.